Alright, here's part, what number am I on? 5? Alright, oh, yeah, I managed to have lost where I saved the video of the battle. So, next opportunity I get to fight a small battle, I'll definitely make sure I know where I saved it at. But I easily won that, and that's where we are right now. But I was just thinking before how strange it is how the United States being a democracy and all, how most of our state capitals and government essentially is more like the Romans than the Greek. Because the Romans back then were a republic. Well, the United States is a republic too, if you really want to define it by its exact definition. But boy, I mean, before you would always compare the United States to, like, the Greek states having them practice democracy before us. But we don't get to vote on, like, the legislation. We don't pass the bills. We don't vote on what happens if we go to war or not. We don't, I mean, we elect these senators, and they go and do what they feel like doing. And of course, I mean, we have corrupt senators just like they did back then. I mean, I'd say our senators are more corrupt than theirs back there. I mean, you'd have mob rule if something too bad were to happen regarding corruption. I mean, that's why the Colosseum was built, just to try to appease the masses. I mean, the grip of control back then wasn't all that strong either. You had to appease the people. But the scandals probably weren't as bad today as they were before. I mean, you had Emperor Nero, who else? Caesar himself was, I mean, he was a great leader and all, but he had his problems too. Yeah, but I just find it interesting how the United States is more like Rome than Athens. I mean, yeah, even during the Revolutionary War, we didn't even have what we have today. We had Articles of Confederation. The first government we had before the Second Constitutional Congress met and secretly changed the government behind closed doors was Articles of Confederation, which was what we're trying to strive for today in politics, but with the senators being as crooked as they are, it's kind of tough. Alright, so probably the last bit of resistance of Carthage down there, but gotta build back the forces there. Now, it'd be interesting to compare, like, senators back then to today's senators. Like, who would you compare, oh, I can't pronounce that Greek, or that Roman name, Cienus, or Ciencensa, well, there's Cassius. Like, if you go back to, like, what most people know back then, like, the people that assassinated, Caesar, those were all senators themselves, too. And back then they had 3 tiers of system, or they didn't call them tiers, they called them councils. There was the emperor, the senate, and then at times there was another, they had like 2 presidents, or what we call presidents. But they call themselves councils. Oops, public order's a little low there. Just gotta change the tax policy there. But the courts were, they sort of had a legislation body back then there too, but it was a far lesser branch, our council, than the Senate and the appointed leaders. But yeah, I mean, the Greek cities were as democratic before than anything. But then, I mean, then you had like Alexander the Great. I mean, they weren't totally democratic themselves too. I mean, they would always have some kind of, I mean, they wouldn't call themselves a dictator or anything, but I mean, power was centralized with them. And then at this time too, you also had the pharaohs over in Egypt, which were more like a monarchy. Essentially, I mean, the kings and queens didn't come out until you had Christianity. Because back in these days, they were all pagans. Yeah, you'd have the god of war, god of nature, god of death, and all that kind of stuff. Back when they had the Romans and all that. Yeah, early in this game, it's pretty slow. I mean, Rome didn't, well, I mean, Rome expanded pretty quickly once they got the legions and all, but early days of Rome, it was slow expansion. The funny thing is, Rome wasn't necessarily going to expand it. What was it? It was Hannibal. He made it up the Alps and did all that stuff, but those few battles where Rome's power wasn't all centralized, to beat Hannibal, they had to centralize the power in Rome, and once they did beat Hannibal, since the power was all centralized in Rome, that's how they started becoming a major empire. I mean, before then they were all scattered cities themselves too. I mean, Rome was a big city and it had other cities that it controlled, but it wasn't until Hannibal made his invasion that Rome became unified and got a large trained army, and from then on expanded. I mean, if Hannibal didn't invade over there, I mean, there's a chance the Roman culture wouldn't have spread all over the world. Yeah, but not much happening in this game yet so far, just transporting, rebuilding, and completing a few Senate missions. Checking out the reports. Oh hey, new. Someone came of age. 3 stars and 1 management ranking. Oh wow. For sure that's a good general. Yeah, but you know, that's a good question to ask people. Like, who do you think was more crooked? Senators of today or senators of Rome? I mean, the scandals by far were all the Romans. I mean, I'm not going into detail of some of the stories of them, but there's some pretty far out stories there. Alright, I think that'll end it for this episode.